Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 119, Past Acquaintance. Xiao Qi said, "Let's hear more about it." Shenzhequan was feeling so warm from Xiao Qi's embrace that he began to sweat. He said, "It wouldn't be as fun if you voice it out when it comes to matters like undressing and what happens after." Xiao Qi grabbed hold of Shenzhequan's fleeing finger. He laughed for a moment before saying, "It wouldn't be as fun if you voice it out? Then, take a moment to hear me out. I'll say it for you." Shenzhequan looked toward the account books. Xiao Qi squeezed the pad of Shenzhequan's finger and looked at the account book together with him. He said, "I haven't even started, so why are you getting all hot and bothered?" Shenzhequan looked askance at Xiao Qi and mouthed soundlessly, "Because of you." Xiao Qi looked at Shenzhequan for a moment, then suddenly lowered his head and buried it into the pit of Shenzhequan's neck. All his earlier emotions had melted away at this look of Shenzhequan. They became another kind of raging torrents that surged along Xiao Qi's chest to his entire body. But no matter how tempestuous the waves were inside of him, he did not dare to use even more strength in embracing of Shenzhequan. That kick that had never once turned a hair during all the years in Chu capital had, along with the passage of time, cunningly turned into pangs of pain after Xiao Qi fell into the clutches of love. The turbidness that was love and hatred went through a cleansing by the heavy downpour to become a crystal clear lake. Xiao Qi drew in his claws, bowing his head in submission to this love. Shenzhequan released his hand and held hands again with Xiao Qi, interlocking their fingers together. He tilted his head to bump gently against Xiao Qi's unmoving head and said, "Have you fallen asleep?" Xiao Qi raised his head and said in a hoarse voice, "Oh, how I love you so." Shenzhequan became slightly stunned. Xiao Qi looked at him and enunciated each word as he repeated, "I love you so much." Shenzhequan remained stunned for a moment before he said, "I." Xiao Qi could not wait any longer. He turned his head and kissed Shenzhequan hard, as if he wanted to give all the love in his heart that could not be expressed with words alone to Shenzhequan. The cool breeze in the courtyard stirred the bamboo blinds, while shadows of flowers shifted under the eaves along with the slanting trajectory of the sun. At the same time, golden light, having penetrated through the obstacles to make it way deeper in, cascaded over the ground. Biwen hunting grounds was not that far away from Tse province, and there was also a bridle path connecting both places. Lang Tao Shuijing could reach it in half a day, so Xiao Qi took Chen Yang and Ding Tao to take a look at the site the next day. Shenzhequan finished sorting out the accounts for this period of time in Tse province and together with Zhou Gui and Kong Ling, made some changes to matters relating to the Tse province garrison troops. Although I had the thought that quite a number of people would come forward to answer our recruitment call, I never expected it to be this many. Zhou Gui was overjoyed. With this, we can further expand the plowing range next year. There's a shortage of grains on the outside which Tse province can supply. To many of those in desperate situations, this is timely help that's equivalent to sending charcoals in snowy weather. It not only solves their urgent needs but also prevents them from turning to banditry. Kong Ling looked delighted as he said to Shenzhequan, "We shall have to trouble the vice commander regarding the military arms. With the way things are going, there will be no more bandits in Tse province's territory when next year comes around." Zhou Gui did not sleep the entire night as he had been making a lot of plans. He said, "If we can also help Dun province and Duan province out of their predicaments, then the bandits from Mount Luo will fall apart without the need for us to attack them. While the recruitment is showing initial success, Your Excellency cannot simply rely on this alone. Tse province has been able to sustain such a large amount of food consumption because everyone from top to bottom in Tse province was able to work as one in the past 5 years. Duan province lies close to Bianxia. Even if they have a change of heart and wish to reclaim the wastelands for farming, they won't be able to do it. Shenzhequan still has other considerations. He continued, "What's more, we currently do not have an emperor on the throne, and ambitious men are easily born out of troubled times. There's a Leijing in Mount Luo, so Cha province might just have their own Leijing, too. Xe province has only just begun to move forward, there's no rush. As he said. Kongling nodded and added, the most pressing task at present is to resolve the issue of household registration. Many of them fled here from other places, and they don't have any documentary proof on them. If they want to reside in Xe province permanently, they will need an identity. Shenzhequan paused for a moment and said, during the reign of Emperor Yanji, the Eastern Palace pushed forth a census registry to register common folks as citizens. It was to be checked and verified by the layers of prefectural prefects, district magistrates, and townships of the various lands. Xe province is currently less populated. Since Xe province is no longer under Great Zhou's command, you can abolish the original 3 registers and let Xe province develop its own new registers, with vagrants still prohibited in the city. Once the registry is finalized, Xe province will be able to collect taxes based on the registry, and subsequently, the accounts will become clearer, too. Then we can get to work and have it straightened out in the coming days. Zhou Gui paused for a moment, then continued, I'm only worried about the Qidong garrison troops now. It has been so long. Kongling piped up too. Why haven't we heard any news from Qidong at all? Shenzhequan had also gotten an inkling of sorts from this period of waiting. If Chu capital wanted to stop Xiao Qiye from returning to Libei, they only had to mobilize Qi Zuyan right away, and she would have been able to stop Xiao Qiye at the border of Zongbo a month ago. However, Chu capital did not do so. They sent Han Jin, an armchair strategist who was all talk and no actual capability. This legitimate son-born of the Han clan was taken captive by the imperial army outside Dan City and was still being held in prison. Going by the division and distribution of Qidong's 5 commanderies, Qi Zuyun could assemble 100,000 men within half a month. Yet, there was still no sign of her up to now. It was already late when Shenzhequan came out of the Zhou's residence. He estimated the time and Xiao Qiye should still be on the way back to the city, so he was not in a hurry to return home. As he descended the stairs, the path ahead brightened up. Fei Sheng carried a lantern, illuminating the road ahead for Shenzhequan. Shenzhequan had been busy with other matters these past few days, and so he had yet to have a talk with Fei Sheng. Fei Sheng tried his best to get close to Chen Yang every day, and he was the most diligent in serving tea and water to Ji Gang. This man, a veteran who had tumbled his way out of Chu capital, was presently holding up the lantern for Shenzhequan, and he did not speak up to interrupt Shenzhequan's thoughts along the way either. From all appearances, he looked as if he was already content enough to hold the lantern for Shenzhequan. There were some people on the streets. Fei Sheng was carefully guiding the way when he suddenly heard Shenzhequan said, I heard you recommended yourself for the job when his lordship went out this morning. Fei Sheng answered with a neutral expression, I saw that Gu Jin had yet to recover from his injuries, and so I thought of going along with his lordship on his behalf. Shenzhequan looked at the road and said nothing more. Once back at the residence, Qiao Tianya took over the lantern. There was still Gu Jin in the courtyard, and it was not Fei Sheng's turn to be on shift duty. So, he went back on his own initiative. If master gives him the cold shoulder, Qiao Tianya said, he might come to harbor resentment. As Shenzhequan entered the long walkway, he looked back to see that Fei Sheng had already made a turn and passed through the moon gate on the other side. He said, I have the mind to use him, but he might not necessarily think highly of me. His rank in the Jinyi Wei is higher than yours. Han Cheng could be said to be one of the key officials he counted on for backing. He was also Han Cheng's right-handed man before the former emperor met with sudden death. There has to be a reason why Han Cheng wants to kill him. It has been several days since he came to Xe province, and yet he has never shown any intent to speak of this reason to me. Shenzhequan stood still and smiled at Qiao Tianya. It wasn't me but Cen he was originally gunning for when he willingly staked and gambled everything on that one move of his in Chu capital. Xian is the second legitimate son of the Prince of Libei. Xiao Shi Sui was severely injured at that time, and the others all thought the Xian was going back to replace Xiao Fangxiu. Fei Shen was already starting to harbor ill feelings towards Han Cheng. Rather than compromising and make concessions to achieve his aim, he might as well leave Chu capital for Libei to carve out another path for himself. The identity of a life-saving benefactor is enough for him to secure a stable life in Libei. Qiao Tianya had some understanding of Fei Shen. He said, "It's inconvenient for Gu Jin now that he's wounded." Fei Shen recommended himself for the job today because he wants to take Gu Jin's place. A pity his lordship is a hard-hearted man and would not give him this opportunity. But Fei Shen was prepared. He had been so attentive towards Ji Gang just so he could leave himself a way out. The self-recommendation today was a kind of test to sound out Xiao Qiye. He had already understood Xiao Qiye's intent, and so he shifted his gaze back to Shen Zequan. This person has real capabilities. Shen Zequan said. He's on par with Gu Jin. It'd be truly a pity to cast him aside and not use him. They had already arrived at the courtyard while they were speaking. Gu Jin was about to arrange for the people to serve the food, but Shen Zequan told him to wait. He should almost be back now. Shen Zequan turned back. Go wait at the entrance and receive him. But this wait lasted for half a night, and Xiao Qiye still had not returned. Shen Zequan stayed up until the burning candles were gone by half before he heard movements at the front. Xiao Qiye strode into the courtyard but did not enter the room immediately. He was covered in dust all over. He took off his outer robe in the courtyard and turned back to look at the person behind him, although the words that came out of his mouth were, "Lanzhou." Shen Zequan looked past Xiao Qiye's shoulder and saw Chen Yang and Gu Jin supporting someone in. The courtyard was not bright enough for Shen Zequan to make out who this person was. This person's robe had been ripped to pieces, and the legs of his trousers were torn. He was wearing a pair of straw shoes that had split apart, and his legs were all caked in dirt and mud. He could not stand firm on his feet and had to rely on Chen Yang and Gu Jin to hold him up as he spouted nonsense. Disheveled and unkempt, he was truly a sorry sight to behold. Shen Zequan suddenly thought of something under the faint light. He probed, "Your Excellency, you." That man shivered and struggled for a bit as he peered forward through the dimness in disbelief. His messy hair exposed a pair of eyes among them. He froze for a moment when he saw Shen Zequan. Then he swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva. His mouth opened and closed. Then all of a sudden, he burst out wailing. "This is draining the life out of me." Yu Xiaozhe cried himself hoarse. He kept wiping his face as he shouted, "Vice Commander! The Grand Secretary is no more. I'm going to die, too. I've been fleeing and hiding the entire journey here. Life has been so hard." Startled, Shen Zequan strode a step out and asked in a heavy voice, "What do you mean, Secretariat Elder Hai is no more?" Chokes of sobs clogged up Yu Xiaozhe's throat. He wanted to answer, but all that came out was the sound of his crying. He cried so hard that he was virtually on the verge of sliding to the ground. He kept shaking his head. At last, overwhelmed with grief and with his voice hoarse from exhaustion, he answered in bureaucratic speak, "The Grand Secretary." The Grand Secretary risked his life in futile remonstration. "Take him away to calm down for a moment and have a change of clothes," Xiao Qiye said with a cool head. "Gu Jin, go inform the kitchen to make some soup and have it sent over." Those wretched cries lingered in the air. Shen Zequan was still standing in the same spot. For all his hundreds and thousands of guesses, he had never foreseen that Hai Lianji would die. Hai Lianji was the stabilizing force of Chu capital. He could even hold on tight to his position in the Grand Secretariat back then when the Hua and Pan factions were at the height of their power and influence. Even if Han Cheng wanted to instill a male offspring from his own clan to the throne after Li Jianheng's death, Hai Lianji should still be the first and best choice of a minister inside and outside the imperial court to entrust the child to. Xiao Qiye held onto Shen Zequan's arm to bring him out of his stupefaction. Xiao Qiye said, I found him among the groups of bandits a few li west of the hunting grounds. It hadn't been easy for him to get out of Chu capital, and he was robbed by the bandits after leaving Dan city, so he could only walk barefoot towards Tse province. He has a letter on him, which Sen Yu wrote to you. He has news about the Chu capital and Qidong as well. ******. Yu Xiaozhe still needed someone to help support him when he entered the room again. He was so famished that he had no strength and had to carry the bowl in his arms to wolf down the food before they could have their conversation. Tears were still streaming down his cheeks as he ate. He seemed to be in a rush as he choked on his food and coughed. It was only when his hunger abated a little that he covered up his face with a clean handkerchief and wiped away at it for a while. It's truly a stroke of luck that I could live long enough to see the vice commander. His Excellency Sen's letter is in my bosom. I kept it close to me throughout for fear that the bandits would search me and find it. Yu Xiaozhe sat on his heels and said with difficulty, before I begin, I have to inform both of you gentlemen that the new emperor who is about to ascend to the throne is a woman. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 120, Affairs in the Capital. There was no place for women in the imperial court. Ethical principles of the time drove them into the inner chambers, becoming fragile objects in the small courtyard of their living quarters, cared for in every way by their husbands and servants, parents, and children. They were porcelain vases to be appraised for their value as they waited to be married off. They did not need to have lofty aspirations. The Empress Dowager, Hua Huai, was from an illustrious clan. She was a legitimate daughter of direct descent born to the principal's wife of the Hua clan. Before she came of age, she had never seen the world beyond the walls of her quarters. After she came of age, she was still bound within the confines of her courtyard. She wrested away to the most supreme power and authority of this realm from her husband's hands, yet she never strode a step beyond that line. Instead, she let down the beaded curtain and sat cautiously with her back straight behind it. Commander-in-Chief Qi Zuyan, similarly came from a distinguished background. She was the legitimate daughter of direct descent born to the principal's wife of the Qi clan, a military family of generals. Before she went to war, she was betrothed to another, but after she went to war, no one dared offer for her hand in marriage anymore. She never got the conferment she deserved, only the concession before at the Dragon Terrace. The Ministry of Rites said that she was not worthy of enjoying the posthumous privilege of being enshrined and worshipped by the imperial ancestral temple after death. The name, Qi Zuyan, had been as of date, branded as the little girl of Qidong. If only Qi Shiu's sons had lived up to expectations, the position of commander-in-chief of the military forces would never have come to fall upon her shoulders. Xue Xiaozhuo initially did not have the thought to support and assist Ling Ting to the throne. That acute disappointment when he found out that the imperial heir was a woman made him change his strategy right at once, but then, he changed his mind when he saw Ling Ting. Because Ling Ting resembled Emperor Guangcheng way too much. Any veteran minister who was old enough to have seen Emperor Guangcheng before could tell Ling Ting's origins at a glance. This was an aberration result of incest within the Li clan. When the Eastern Palace fell from power during the reign of Emperor Yanji, the only reason for Emperor Guangcheng to leave the palace was to pay a visit to Prince Jin, who had taken ill, and his beautiful, defenseless wife. Emperor Guangcheng did not have any imperial concubine who was in his favor during the later years of the Yanji era. After he fell ill, the Empress, Hua Huai, took control of the former imperial court and harem to prevent him from begetting another imperial heir. It was under these layers of walls around him that Emperor Guangcheng set his eyes on his daughter-in-law. A pity that Princess Consort Qin gave birth to a girl. Like an old lion who had exhausted every bit of his energy, Emperor Guangcheng did not even lift an eyelid when he learned of this news and subsequently lost all the lofty aspirations he once harbored. No one knew if Prince Jin had caught some wind of it, but it was not long before he passed away from his illness. Before his death, he threw Lingting out of Chu capital. However, it seemed to be fated that Zhang Yun would come across her and bring her back. When Xue Xiaozuo had found Lingting the first time, she was uncouth in behavior and was already in her teens. Pulling her back onto the seat of the imperial heir would be an impossible task without the determination to transform her from inside out. It was very difficult at the beginning. She had spent too much time in Zhangyun Villa. If she herself were not resolute enough to erase all those superfluous traces on her completely, then it would have been undoable even if Xue Xiaozuo had extraordinary powers. But Lingting actually corrected herself, one step at a time. Little by little, she scraped all those vulgar and frivolous things off herself. At first, there were plenty of words she could not read, so she studied hard through the nights. Strokes she could not write well, she would practice them day and night. She seemed to be the last remaining bit of strength heaven left for the Li clan's empire. She allowed Xue Xiaozuo to see a faint glimmer of light in that deteriorating situation. A few months ago, when the misty rain enveloped the silk tree blossoms, when Qi Huilian rejected Xue Xiaozuo in the loft, Lingting was sitting upright at the table practicing her calligraphy. She used so much strength in her writing that she almost broke the paper. After she was done writing, she turned her head aside to look at the drizzling rain. She watched it for a long time without expression. Xue Xiaozuo later came over to have a meal with her. She sat in the seat of lower priority and ate her meal with precise table manners. Xue Xiaozuo was particular about not speaking when eating, so they never talked when they were having their meals. After the meal, he would test Lingting on her homework. This was the most important event of the day. Lingting had to be precise and clear in her answers. Xue Xiaozuo never scolded her, but he was more exacting on her than anyone else. "Teacher," Lingting paused for a moment as she lowered her head. "Am I going to have a change of teacher?" Xue Xiaozuo put the books in order and said with indifference, "This isn't a matter for you to think about." Lingting was silent as she propped herself up. She listened as Xue Xiaozuo rose to his feet and walked towards the door. She suddenly turned her head aside to look at Xue Xiaozuo and asked, "Is it because I'm a woman?" Xue Xiaozuo stood still and turned back to look at Lingting, too. Lingting never averted her eyes. She was just as calm as Xue Xiaozuo. "I'm a woman," Lingting said. "If the new teacher isn't willing to teach me for this reason, then I'd like to ask to see him personally." Xue Xiaozuo turned around again and changed his shoes. The sound of rain outside intensified. He said, "No, it just wasn't in your fate to be his disciple. I'll still continue to teach you myself. Fate is the most difficult thing to make do with. Wise teachers are hard to seek. I'm not willing to let a teacher slip by because of this." Lingting had already stood up. "Teacher." But Xue Xiaozuo paid her no heed, nor did he answer her. He lifted the curtain, and the young servant boy waiting on the outside hurriedly held up the umbrella. Without letting the servant touch the books, he went down the stairs and left. Lingting stood where she was and watched through the gap in the same curtain as Xue Xiaozuo walked a few steps before he disappeared in the rain. She knew this was a soundless rejection from Xue Xiaozuo. No matter what other people thought of Xue Xiaozuo, he was, in Lingting's eyes, exceedingly calm under that gentle and refined mask of his. He was even a little conceited. He would never open himself up to manipulation by others, and it was rare for him to heed the words of others. Lingting could only let the matter drop. She sat back down, flipped open the essay on contemporary politics that Xue Xiaozuo had left behind, and copied Xue Xiaozuo's calligraphy. But she could never write like him. Because she did not know how to rein herself in diplomatically. Her strokes were just like steel blades that would never go around in circles. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Several months later, the scorching sun blazed down upon the Dragon Terrace where a densely packed mass of court officials was kneeling. These were officials from humble backgrounds headed by Hai Lianji. After the 6th month, Han Cheng brought back a boy from his own clan and claimed this child to be a descendant of the Li clan. Under Yao Wenyu's meticulous care, Hai Lianji's condition took a turn for the better. The first thing he did when he attended court was to reject Han Cheng's memorial in his capacity as the Grand Secretary of the Grand Secretariat. He also demanded an official verification of this child's identity. But the emperors of the Li clan were all dead, and it was impossible to determine if this child was a descendant of the Li clan based on the endorsement of the Empress Dowager alone. Both parties reached a deadlock, with no one willing to make any more concessions. I was the 8th Great Training Division's vice commander during the reign of Emperor Yanji, and I was also the top military officer under Emperor Guangqing's command. I have a private letter from Emperor Guangqing entrusting the care of the child to me. Grand Secretary, is this not enough either? Han Cheng had gained power recently and so, he dared to refute Hai Lianji on the imperial court. Hai Lianji did not have the same vigor as before after his illness. His heart would palpitate and his hands would tremble just by standing for a few moments. He stepped out and said, mere words without a factual basis. If the commander is willing to make the private letter public and hand it over to the Grand Secretariat for examination, then you and I would have no further need to engage in such a war of words on the imperial court. Han Cheng sneered inwardly to himself. There was no imperial heir at present, and it was the throne being left vacant that Hai Lianji should be getting anxious about. For him to be so unwilling to make a concession, he must already have found a candidate. So, he said, the throne has been left empty for more than a month. What is the Grand Secretary still waiting for? The Grand Secretariat has been deliberating over it? Has it still not come up with a solution? Hai Lianji was sweating all over. He felt a stifling oppression in his chest, so he took a short breather before continuing. We sorted out the clan register and found out that the second son of the former Prince Yan's grandson born of a concubine is still in Hubei province. He is a descendant of the Li clan with a traceable lineage. According to the rules, no one else but him is fit to be the current crown prince candidate. Prince Yan was the prince of Hubei province during the reign of Wangsuan. His descendants of direct lineage died in battle at Loxia Pass, and those born of concubines further down are all from the branch family of the clan. How can they be called the bloodline of the Li clan if we were really to check into it? The second son of Prince Yan's grandson born of a concubine is already approaching 70 years of age, so how can he still head the government? Han Cheng smiled. Furthermore, it's a long and bumpy journey. How is he going to stand this kind of physical and mental torment? Grand Secretary, there is simply no way we can discuss this further in detail. Both parties stood their ground, with no one backing down. There were still students from the Imperial College kneeling outside. The Empress Dowager listened behind the bead curtains for a moment before saying, although this matter is urgent, there is still room for discussion. Secretariat Elder, the Grand Secretariat assists in governmental affairs, and there has never been a time when I do a perfunctory job of such matters. If you have objections, you can come over to Mingli Hall to discuss it face to face with me. Please get the students to disperse. She spoke in a soft voice, but Hai Lianji could hear the displeasure. Although Han Cheng went all out to push forth this child, he had always been submitting his memorials in the capacity as the former vice commander of the 8 great training divisions. He never let the officials from the noble clans to second his proposal. This was firstly, to allow the Han clan to become the only support that the new emperor could rely on, and secondly, to avoid suspicion. Avoiding suspicion was exceptionally important. Hua Saiqian and Pan Rugui both failed because they did not know how to avoid suspicion. Forming factions for one's selfish ends was a great taboo in the imperial court. It had not been long since the Empress Dowager took control over the imperial court again. At present, she was just like the emperor. What she could not stand to see was her ministers flocking together to become a force powerful enough to coerce her into making policy decisions. As such, she did not promote officials from humble backgrounds as a gesture of goodwill, nor did she promote officials from the noble clans in order to secure her power. She seemed to understand that Great Zhou had already come to a certain point. Instead of pinning her hopes on a puppet like she had done a few years before, she might as well count on herself. Hai Lianji was sick for 2 months, during which officials from humble backgrounds were extremely jittery and on edge. With Kong Qiu and Sen Yu taking the lead, they carried out plenty of discussions in private, and they also repeatedly submitted memorials to ask the Empress Dowager to let Hai Lianji return to the imperial court to administer state affairs. Furthermore, the students from the imperial college still had the nerve to engage in idle talks of state affairs. The 6th month had only just arrived, and there were already rumors that the Empress Dowager had seized power and established herself as the ruler. The Empress Dowager did not have any overt discussions with Hai Lianji, but she increased the frequency of visits paid by the eunuchs. This was a kind of covert prompt. So, Hai Lianji attended court as soon as the 6th month came around, when his illness had just taken a turn for the better. Although he had, in the past decades, asserted that he never was a part of a faction or clique, he had already become the direction in which all the scholars of humble origins in the world looked to. This was a fact he could not deny even if he wanted to. He had already turned into a powerful force of sorts. Hai Lianji fell ill, and everyone in the world panicked. Hai Lianji rejected Han Cheng's memorial, and before the Empress Dowager gave her reply, the officials and students had already kneeled for a day. Without realizing it, he had become the thorn in the Empress Dowager's flesh, far more than the overbearing Han Cheng. Hai Lianji braced himself to hang on and said, "The Imperial College students have the duty to discuss official affairs to begin with, and the Imperial Court is a place where the world has their eyes on. It's only when there are discussions that there can be strategies. Your Majesty heads the administration diligently and attends to affairs personally. Still, officials are appointed to share the burdens of their superiors at the top and oversee the work of their subordinates at the bottom. It's Great Zhou's blessing that they are concerned about state affairs. What's more, the matter of the Crown Prince is not just a family affair. This subject thinks that it's only by letting them remain here that we can have an open discussion on the issue of the new emperor." It was not stuffy and warm in the hall. There were bamboo blinds hanging everywhere to hold in broken blocks of ice. To Hai Lianji, it was even a little bit cold. He stood with his head lowered after he was done saying his piece. Behind the beaded curtain, the Empress Dowager remained silent for a long time. It was only when Hai Lianji's legs began aching that she finally answered in an unhurried tone. "What the Secretariat Elder has said makes sense. In that case, I shall listen to you. As for the matter of the second son of Prince Yan's grandson, I still have yet to see the clan registry, so it's inappropriate for me to come to a conclusion. But Han Cheng's people are already here. Do you want to let the Court of Judicial Review assist in checking, or would you prefer the Ministry of Justice to do it? I shall do as you say." End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 121, Liang Yi. Hai Lianji did not want to be supported by anyone after the court session was dismissed. Kong Qiu and the rest knew that the Secretariat Elder was a strong-willed one who did not like to look weak, and so they only dared to follow behind him and watch as he hobbled along alone and made his way slowly down. That official robe of his soaked in the last of the evening rays like a scar blending into its brilliance. At this time last year, he had led hundreds of officials in attending court. What an imposing, spirited sight he had cut back then. But now, there was no trace of this will and spirit to be found on him. Hai Lianji reached the end and stopped. He slowly turned back to look at the officials on the stairs, then at the last remaining sunset glow above the upturned eaves of Mingli Hall. "It's getting dark," Hai Lianji said gently. "Be careful on your way back." For some reason, Kong Qiu felt a tinge of fear at this moment. He strode a step out with the intent to support Hai Lianji by the arms. Choking a little with emotion as he called out, "Teacher!" Hai Lianji waved a hand at him and turned around to walk towards the palace gates. The descendant of Prince Yan's grandson born to a concubine was Hai Lianji's last line of battle. He watched as that setting sun was covered up by the buildings. A sense of powerlessness washed over him. He knew what it signified for a child of the Han clan to ascend to the throne. He had fought this battle for 30 years, and his steady pursuit to sue for peace had never once scored a victory. He could only try his best to set himself aflame and throw these old bones of his into the intense fire, hoping that the splatter of sparks would be able to light up the night sky that had been deadly still for so long. An endless night had descended upon Great Zhou and he seemed to be the only remaining torch left. But to date, he still could not bring himself to admit that Qi Huilian and the rest who had once shared the same goal in spite of their differing paths had all failed. He watched as those geniuses fall like shooting stars, one after another, leaving himself behind feeling as insignificant as ever. 30 years ago, Hai Lianji was not concerned with success or failure. 30 years later, Hai Lianji was all burned out and spent. Steadily but surely, he walked on his own path and attempted to hold back Qi Huilian, who was taking extreme, radical measures as he charged ahead. But he failed to do so. No one knew that the night when the entire Eastern Palace was eliminated was the most painful moment in Hai Lianji's life. It was already dark. By the time Hai Lianji made his way to the palace gates, he was already panting. He lifted his sleeves to wipe his sweat and saw Yao Wenyu standing beside the sedan waiting for him. Yao Wenyu came over to help him up. Hai Lianji took his seat, and just as Yao Wenyu was about to lower the curtain, Hai Lianji said to him, "Yuan Zhou, there is a load on my mind that has yet to be resolved. Make a trip to Wu City tomorrow on my behalf. Pack your bags tonight." During the court session a few days later, the Empress Dowager exempted Hai Lianji from standing. But the more she treated him with such courtesy and respect, the more it meant that her dissatisfaction with Hai Lianji was intensifying. This was because the imperial censors from the Chief Surveillance Bureau had been working as one for these past few days to launch a series of scathing rebukes at Han Cheng. Cries of demand for an official verification of the child from the Han clan rose to an all-time high, and this tidal wave surging around Hai Lianji was forcing the Empress Dowager to make a concession. The Empress Dowager had a hard time sleeping in the day and at night, and her hesitation put Han Cheng in a desperate situation. Gradually, it dawned on Han Cheng that the Empress Dowager was trying to take advantage of the conflict to destroy him. As long as he could not bear the weight of the burden and perish under the voices of castigation, the Empress Dowager would be able to support the Han clan's child into ascending to the throne immediately and eliminate the possibility of Han Cheng grabbing any power. When that time comes, she would be able to focus on confronting those of officials of humble backgrounds. Whether she would be giving Hai Lianji the cold shoulder or have the Grand Secretary of the Grand Secretariat replaced, she would be able to do it with more ease than she could at present. Han Cheng was unwilling to let the matter drop and surrender the power in his hands on a silver platter to others. Even if he had to put up with it, he had to make Hai Lianji suffer. The situation is unstable at present. Libei in the northeast is eyeing us like a tiger watching its prey, while Zhongbo to the east is beginning to show signs of stirring. Is the world going to take the lead of the Grand Secretary if we don't have a new emperor because the Grand Secretariat keeps delaying the matter of the Crown Prince? Han Cheng's mouth was already blistered from the verbal battle that had gone on for several days running. He suddenly flung his sleeves and said, "If you ask me, the Grand Secretary is rallying his own faction to obstruct the imperial court from designating a Crown Prince. His intention is condemnable. That's a slanderous accusation." Sen Yu rebuked sternly in his capacity as the head of the imperial censors. "We have been discussing the matter of the Crown Prince appointment for several days in a row, and yet the commander has been unwilling to verify the real identity of this imperial heir officially. So, who is the one here trying to constrain efforts to designate a Crown Prince? The imperial court had the support of the public previously. If it weren't for the commander's insistence on surrounding the Marquis of Dingdu Xiaoqiye to capture him, how would Chu capital find itself caught in such a predicament? If we were to hold someone accountable for this, you'd be the one to bear the bulk of the responsibility. Well, then. Han Cheng sneered and pointed at Sen Yu. Xiaoqiye assassinated the late emperor. As the commander-in-chief of the Jinyi Wei and viceroy of the 8 great training divisions, I'm perfectly justified in taking this person down. You said I did wrong, and that means you're saying that he did right in assassinating the last emperor. You are on good terms with Xiaoqiye and Shen Zequan. Sensunyi, the Ministry of Justice didn't trace their investigation to you, did they? Kong Baran, both of you are truly close friends from the same school. This Han Cheng, am truly envious. Fury washed over Kong Chiu's face. He said, what nonsense are you spouting? We are still investigating whether Xiaoqiye really did assassinate the late emperor. If we just take your words as it is without evidence, then we might just as well do away with the Ministry of Justice. Besides, you were also present during our private gathering, were you not? You drank quite the amount of wine too. Han Cheng said, I'm a Jinyi Wei. Keeping my ears to the ground at all times and taking records is my duty. If I don't show up when you senior officials have a private gathering, then how can I know precisely what has been said? I have already told someone to transcribe everything that has been discussed in detail that night for Her Majesty. I'm in the clear. Do you people dare to though? Having received help from Xiaoqiye before, Pan Xiangzhe was fearful of being implicated, and so he had been keeping a low profile on the imperial court lately. Han Cheng was presently in power, and Pan Xiangzhe went along with whatever he said. Seeing them argue again, his lips opened and closed, and he took several small steps back, not daring to cut into the conversation. He made up his mind to be a coward like a turtle hiding in its shell. Gradually, several parties got carried away with their verbal assaults on each other. Sen Yu was the most eloquent of all. He cursed Han Cheng so savagely that even if Han Cheng wanted to put up with his words, he was boiling with so much rage that the hand he was pointing at Sen Yu with was trembling hard. But still, he kept a clear head as he slid down to his knees on the ground and burst out wailing as though he was going to go for broke. Your Majesty. Han Cheng lay prostrate on the ground and wept bitterly. Your Majesty. This subject's heart is as pure and bright as the moon. It's my fault for surrounding Xiaoqiye to capture him. It's also my fault that the late emperor was assassinated. And now it's even my fault that we have no one to be the crown prince. As an official, I'm willing to die for my sovereign and be punished by my sovereign. If there is a crime, then it's all on me. Whether I'm to be killed alone or along with my family, I will accept whatever sentence my master dishes out. Kong Chiu found this man truly shameless. He promptly raised his hands to remove his wuxia hat and said, I am ashamed to be of the same rank as a vile person of this kind. If the real identity of the imperial heir cannot be officially verified, then this Kong Baran might as well forfeit this official post. The Empress Dowager abruptly rose to her feet and lifted the beaded curtain to sweep a cold glance over them one at a time before her eyes came to a stop on Han Cheng. She said, we are discussing official matters on the imperial court, so what are you crying for? Get up. Then she looked at Kong Chiu. You are a member of the Grand Secretariat and could be said to be the Deputy Grand Secretary. You are someone who presides over the affairs of the state. You keep using your resignation at every turn as a pressure tactic. Are you trying to threaten me into giving in, or are you thinking of fishing for praises you know it best yourself? Ever since I stood in to act on behalf of the Son of Heaven, I have to ask the Grand Secretariat about all the matters in detail, regardless of its significance, so what is there that can't be explained clearly that you have to keep pushing every step of the way? All the ministers kneeled. Our forefathers laid down the rule that the harem cannot interfere in politics. I've been overstepping my boundary time and again that I'm already too ashamed to face my ancestors. Jianheng passed away so suddenly this time. If not for your repeated pleas, how would I have been willing to step out into this court once again to take charge of governmental affairs? We lack an emperor now, and I'm merely a widow who is without a child. Hot tears brimmed in her eyes when she spoke to this point. When has Emperor Guangcheng ever let me suffer such grievance when he was still around? Han Cheng seemed to be so moved by the emperor and empress's deep love that he covered his face as he lay prostrate on the ground and wailed. This subject never had to put up with such a treatment either when Emperor Guangcheng was around. I'm deeply aware that I'm an ignorant and shallow person. I'm merely a soldier. I dare not compare myself with the various major officials from the Grand Secretariat. What's more with the Grand Secretary? It's all because of my staunch loyalty and deep love for the Li clan that I dared to return the imperial heir to the imperial court. Grand Secretary, why go to such an extent? Han Cheng has repeatedly been fanning the flames towards Lianji. Kong Qiu was burning with pent-up anger deep down. It was with difficulty that he said, Your Majesty. Heaven can attest to the Grand Secretary's heart and intentions. Designating a crown prince is by no means a small issue. We are beset with difficulties all around at present. Great Zhou is already at the most critical moment of its survival. If we cannot proceed with prudence and caution, then I fear there will be no end of trouble for the future. I understand this as well. That's why I have called the various excellencies here for days on end to discuss it in detail. The Empress Dowager regained her composure and said, The imperial heirs after Emperor Guangcheng have all passed away, and now, we can't even find ourselves a crown prince. The harder the crisis is, the more we should work together as one. Han Cheng, hand over Emperor Guangcheng's private letter for the various excellencies present to verify it officially. Where on earth would Han Cheng have a private letter entrusting the child to him? The reason he had been holding out and refusing to hand it over was that he was competing with Lianji and the Empress Dowager to see who was more capable of stalling. The moment Lianji relented and the wave of officials from humble backgrounds dispersed, the Empress Dowager's desire to head the country would be unstoppable. When the time came, she would have no choice but to let the child from the Han clan ascend to the throne. By then, he would truly become the minister the child had been entrusted to. The golden age of the Han clan was just right before his eyes. He understood that the Empress Dowager currently wanted to push him into the corner to his death, so he cried even louder. Han Cheng beat his chest and said, The various excellencies doubt my loyalty, so you may as well let me die. My dear younger brother of direct descent. He ended up being held hostage in Tse province to the state, all just to hunt down that Xiao Qi Ye. I had an eye injured for the late emperor, and I took 3 slashes of the blade for Emperor Guangcheng. So how can I be a shallow, narrow-minded person who deceives the entire world for my own selfish desire? All they had been going back and forth about was selfish desire. Cries and curses flooded the imperial court. No one else mentioned Prince Yan's descendant again. Kong Qiu remained kneeling, but his heart had already gone cold. Lianji had not spoken a word today. Supporting himself on the handles of the chair, he suddenly stood up. Countless gazes converged together on him. Officials from humble backgrounds looked on expectantly for the Grand Secretary to turn the table and regain control of the situation again, while officials from the noble clans remained silent and waited for a good opportunity. They all focused their attention on Lianji, just like they did in the past. Lianji started coughing. His emaciated, wizened hand trembled as he covered the blood with a handkerchief. He swallowed some saliva and slowly looked around the great hall, then at all these faces. Finally, he looked at the Empress Dowager. Back then, the Li clan reigned supreme, and it took several years of conquest before the empire was finally united as one. Over the past 100 years, generations after generations of Great Zhou's officials have, without exception, devoted all themselves to the court and spared no effort in their duties. Although the city walls of Chu capital during the reign of Emperor Yanji are old, its integrity still remains and its spirit still exists. At the start of the reign of Emperor Yanji, Qi Huilian of Yu province successively came in first in all three imperial examinations, and from then, the imperial college flourished. Although the three preceptors of the Yao clan were born of a noble clan, they advocated freedom of speech and recruited all kinds of outstanding talents. Most of the scholars of humble origin still serving in this imperial court today joined the imperial court during that period of time. Kong Qiu lowered his head. As he recalled the past, he could not help but choke with sobs softly. But then, the period of resurgence during the reign of Emperor Yanji was merely a flash in the pan. It had only been 10 years, and Emperor Guangcheng fell ill. Then the noble clans thrived once again, and prejudices over family status divided the imperial academy. From the reign of Emperor Yanji to Emperor Xiand, no other scholars of humble origins entered the imperial court. This has become the imperial court of the noble clans. Pan Xiangzhe looked embarrassed and kept his head bowed in a kowtow without saying a word. Han Chen wanted to say something but Hai Lianji suddenly raised his voice. During the reign of Emperor Xiand, the state treasury was empty. This subject made a request to Hua Saiqian to hand over the accounts. He worked in hand with the various noble clan officials who were then serving as the ministers of the various ministries to avoid the issue and dismissed me in a perfunctory manner time and time again. In that same year, Zhuexi was hit by a disaster, and it was a scene of desolation and despair everywhere. Once again, this subject forced Hua Saiqian to hand over the accounts, only to have him skirted around the issue. Not long later, the troops of Zongbo suffered a defeat, and the granaries of the 6 prefectures turned up emptied overnight after the battle. To this date, Hua Saiqian had never given a clear explanation of this account. Is this his fault, or is it the fault of everyone here for exacerbating the issue? Alarmed, Pan Xiangzhe hurriedly said, about this matter, the Court of Judicial Review has already. Ever since this subject, Hai Renqi, has returned to the imperial court, I have been repeatedly remonstrating and requesting to officially verify the real identity of the imperial heir from the Han clan. Han Cheng keeps hesitating, and to date, he is still unwilling to hand over the private letter entrusting the child to him. Left without a choice, I took charge and directed the Grand Secretariat to search through the imperial registry before I eventually presented a memorial to ask Her Majesty to choose and designate the descendant of Prince Yan of Huai Province as the crown prince, but it was a futile attempt. The Empress Dowager was stunned into taking half a step back by this impassioned tone. The beaded curtain fell noisily over her body as she looked at Hai Lianji in shock and uncertainty. Hai Lianji was on fire. The fury in his heart had been suppressed for a full 30 years, and it was now burning so intensely that his spirit blazed once more into existence and left the entire hall shocked. He said, "The decline of the state is all my fault as the Grand Secretary. I have been remonstrating with the ruler all my life, I already have no more to fear. Since my remonstration is futile while I'm alive, then I shall remonstrate with great joy today with my death. A crown prince can be appointed, but the child from the Han clan must never be appointed as the crown prince. A crown prince can be appointed." Before anyone could bat an eyelash, Hai Lianji's sleeves rose with the wind, like falling leaves set on fire right before everyone's eyes. An earth-shaking thud followed. Blood splattered. Dead silence descended upon the entire hall. The Empress Dowager's limbs went icy cold, and she almost slid to the ground. Her eyes traced along that splattered blood with difficulty and landed upon Hai Lianji. A moment later, the entire court of officials rose to their feet with exclamations of shock. Kong Qiu practically crawled over on his knees and propped Hai Lianji up. "Renqi," the Empress Dowager's voice trembled, why go to such an extent? This one head smash completely severed Han Cheng's retreat route. Hai Lianji used death to attain the wrath of all the scholars in the world. The boy from the Han clan would never be able to become emperor. Whoever dared to attempt to would risk universal condemnation, to seek infamy would be the thorn in the flesh of all the realm's literati in the future. But even Han Cheng himself was stunned on the ground. Never in his wildest dream could he have imagined that Hai Lianji would go to such extremes. With his face drenched in blood, Hai Lianji looked up at the high, unreachable roof. He had been seeking for peace and stability his entire life. Yet, at this last moment, he took such drastic measures for once. He became the blazing sun that had burst out of Great Zhou, flaming with countless rays of light in that pitch-black night. The crane on his chest, which had already been stained red, rose and fell with the last remaining heaves of his chest. He gripped Kong Qiu's hand tightly. "Baran," Hai Lianji said softly. "I have done everything I can." End chapter.